Hey everyone, welcome to Miles Beyond the Page. I'm your host, Michelle Miles, and this is the show where we dive deep into the world of writing and publishing. Each month, well, actually, it's each week now, I sit down with authors from every stage of their journey. We'll explore their creative process, uncover tips and insights, and celebrate the highs and lows of a writing life. So grab your beverage of choice and settle in and join me as we go miles beyond the page. Today, I'm excited to host Adrienne Giordano. Adrienne is a USA Today bestselling author of over 40 romantic suspense, mystery novels, and women's fiction novels. She is also a certified life coach with a passion for helping people reach their goals. And that's just the brief version. Um, so let's talk about first. I want to talk about your new romantic suspense and your women's fiction. So the first one is Crash Course. Tell us a
Yes.
little bit about that.
So Crash Course is the latest in the part of a series called, it's a romantic suspense series that I co-write with two other authors. And it's the Steel Ridge series. And we have three, they're all written in the, Steel Ridge world, but there's three separate series, right? There's the first Steel Ridge, then there's Steel Ridge the Kingstons, and then Steel Ridge the Blackwells, and they're all family members. So Cruz Blackwell he's one of those characters that just stays with you forever and ever and chatters in your ear all the time. And I said he kind of reminds me in a lot of ways like my son, because he says things that I just want to pinch his little cheeks sometimes. If he's thinking it, he says it. And, sometimes he's Mr. Inappropriate.
Yeah.
But he is near and dear to my heart. So, yes, the Blackwells own a recovery service, like a high-end recovery service. So if, you have a $500,000 painting that gets stolen, they are the ones you call to retrieve it. And if they have to play outside the lines to retrieve it, they are not afraid to do that.
That's awesome. So how does that collaboration work with the other two authors? How do you guys kind of do
Well, for
that?
the Blackwells, it was just Tracy Devlin and I in
Hmm.
this series. Kelsey is taking a little writing break. But really, what's fun is we each write our own book rather than, both of us co-writing a title.
Hmm.
But what's funny is, I've co-written books before with Misty Evans, where she and
Hmm.
I are actively writing in the same book. With this, because we're each writing our own book, we have to coordinate on settings. And,
Yeah.
it was one book I want to say it was the first Steel Ridge. I needed a door off the kitchen, and there was no door off the kitchen. And it was like one of the later books in the series. And Tracy was like, "Yeah, there's no door." And I'm like, "Well, I need there to be a door." So sometimes it's those little details that trip you up, and
Yeah.
it takes a lot of planning with each other. So
Hmm.
we're all working with the same. I mean, we have town maps, we have house maps, so we know where all the rooms are. It really, that was the biggest surprise for me, was just the amount of coordination.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, do you have maps and floor plans and
Oh
all of
gosh,
that?
yeah.
I can imagine.
Spreadsheets. Because I mean, if you think about it, because all of these characters, they're all like in the Blackwells, they're brothers,
Hmm.
right? They're all
Right.
brothers, right? So each author has to know exactly what that character looks like. If, when Tracy's writing Cruz, she needs a little bio basically on Cruz. So she knows what he looks like, what color
Right.
his eyes are. Yeah. So tons of spreadsheets and, you know, pen
Yeah.
emails back and forth go, what shirt does Zeke like to wear?
I was going to ask, it's got to be like a massive story Bible too. So, and I assume that do you guys pre-plot these books?
We
Do you
do.
do the
Yep. We
do,
plot them. We used to go twice a year. We would go to a location off-site, just to get us kind of out of our environments. And we would just plot for, probably 3 or 4 days. We'd be together working on just plotting, and we would take turns. We would round robin it. We'd do Tracy's book, Kelsey's book, my book. And then as you're writing them, things change,
Sure,
but
yeah.
it was great. Just we had such a great chemistry that
Mm.
just bouncing ideas off of each other was so fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I find this collaboration so fascinating. I have yet to do it, but Misty and I are actually planning a series together, so I'm
Fun.
really
Yeah.
excited. Yeah, excited about that. But you're like the third person I've talked to that has done some sort of collaboration with other authors in a series or books so I find it very fascinating, and I like to kind of get into the nitty-gritty of how that all works,
Oh, yeah. Well,
which we
and
don't
it,
have time, but
yeah, no, it's different for each collaboration too,
yeah,
right? Depending on how, like with Misty and I, how we've always done it. I think we've written, I don't know, 11 or 12 books together now.
yeah.
Working on one now in our Shock Sisters mystery. Typically, she takes one character and I'm the other character, and we just go back and forth. So, but
Yeah.
it really just depends on who you're working with and how you both like to work. And
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And I should say that's how we met is through Misty.
yes, absolutely.
She she
Yes.
she connected us.
Yeah.
Um she's great. And I've known her a long time too. So the other book that I have listed here is you have recently moved into women's fiction with The Money Shot.
Yep.
So can you tell us a little about that?
Yes. So Becca is, they call her Dr. Becca. She is the top rated, she has a talk show. She's a psychologist. She has a PhD, and she has the top rated talk show on television. And she is renowned for fixing marriages, right? So if your
Mhm.
marriage is in trouble, you go on the Dr. Becca show and she's going to fix you right up. Until her own marriage sort of makes some headlines. And it's really, I was just fascinated by exploring, because really her whole platform was built on this 20 some odd years long marriage, and how she and her husband were splashed all over, billboards, and her brand was really built on the strength of her marriage.
Hmm.
And she finds out a lot of things about her marriage that are in direct conflict with that. And it's really about how far someone would go to protect their livelihood
Hmm.
when it impacts their personal life. So I had a ton of fun with that book. Ton of
That
fun with it.
that's interesting. It sounds really good. So it's another book that I'm adding to my TBR.
Well, thank you.
Sure, for sure. Do you think that you'll write any more women's fiction or
I do, yeah. No, I just finished one, not just, late fall, I finished one that is making the rounds right now, trying to find a publisher for that one. So, yeah, yeah.
yeah, nice. And did you indie publish the Money Shot or did you have a publisher for
I
that
did.
one?
I indie published that one. That one made the rounds with publishers as well. I tend to like to break some rules. I think where women's fiction is, I went in one direction in one part of the book that I did get feedback from
Mm,
editors and agents on it. And it was one of those things where I felt so strongly that it was such an integral part of the plot that I didn't want to change it. Uh,
yeah.
and I left it and I indie published the book.
Yeah, and it seems to be doing very well. I actually just looked at it on Amazon. So you've
I
gotten
love
some
it.
really good, yeah, you got some good reviews. So that's great.
Yeah. Yep.
It's always exciting to step into a new genre, I think.
Oh, yes.
The
Sure.
I I I just broke into young adults, so yeah, I really like, learning the new genre and writing for a different audience. It's really fun.
My
Um
Tracy calls it like cleansing the palate. Yeah,
Yeah.
something new, learning a new genre, the different tropes or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I kind of know your publishing journey, but could you share with us a little bit about how you decided to start writing books and what sort of led you down the path of wanting to be a writer?
Yeah, sure. I've always enjoyed writing, right? I'm one of those people, when I was a kid, I would draw my little stories, I would make my little pretend books. Um, and really, probably as far back as high school, I thought, well, one day I'm going to write a book, right? But probably we all say that at some point, right?
Yeah.
And, life took over. I got a corporate job, but writing always was kind of in the back of my mind. And then, probably not until my mid 30s, I was in a position where I could take some time to write.
Hmm.
And I did, right? I started writing, and I mean, it took me, I think, 5 years to write my first book. So that was really, I had a practice book. I called it my practice book that will never see the light of day. I think it was 140,000 words by the time I was done with it. Um, but I learned a lot of hard lessons on it, and that
Hmm.
got to writing the book that I felt like, okay, this one maybe has a shot. And it did. That was Risking Trust. So that was my Private Protector series, kind of launched my career for me.
Nice. And so you had an agent and an editor and all, you had a publisher at that time?
I had, yes, that one was traditionally published
Hmm.
by Carina Press, which was,
Mm,
back in the day, one of the first digital only
yeah,
publisher.
right.
Um, and that book, I'll tell you, that book had again made the rounds with editors and agents, and I had gotten great feedback on it. Um, so I figured I was like, okay, I've got something here, but there was always something that wasn't working with it
Mm,
that couldn't, do it. And then a friend of mine had just gone through the same thing, the rounds and rounds of rejections, and she had submitted to Karina and said, "Why don't you try it? It's a great way." And this was prior to the whole indie revolution, really.
yeah.
So this was like back in probably 08, 09.
Hmm.
And, I was really close to giving up at that point because I was just, the rejections were soul crushing at that point.
Yes.
And I did, I tried, and oh my gosh, when they say it just takes one yes, I found an editor who understood my voice, she understood my humor, and it wasn't actually until book two that I sold, right? So
Oh
I had
yeah. Hmm.
sent her book two in the series. I hadn't yet sent her book one because I like that one was the one getting all the rejections. So I sent
Hmm.
her book two, and I said to her, that's book two in a series. I'm writing book three now. I have book one. And she was like, send me everything. And they bought the whole series, right? So,
Wow.
I had back then, I had five releases in 13 months. So it was
Wow.
just, and I mean, back then, and even today in the traditional publishing world, that's kind of an unusual thing to have happen.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it worked. Yeah.
That's awesome. I remember Karina Press. I tried to get into them, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I never did. Um, so what led you to the indie publishing path?
Well, I have a mystery series, my Lucy Rizzo mystery series.
Mm,
I have a girlfriend that worked in investment banking for years, for 30 years. And she used to have these funny stories about investment banking. And I kept saying to her, we'd be at dinner and I'd say, there's a book in there somewhere. There's a book in there somewhere. So I had this idea about this investment banker who gets downsized and has to move back home. And her father's a mob boss, here in Chicago, and she becomes a dog walker because she's got to find a job, right? So she just gets embroiled in these crazy mysteries, and I had such fun with that series. And again, my agent loved it. She made the rounds on it. And that was a case where I was sort of, and I didn't know it at the time, I was teetering along the lines of women's fiction, but it
Mm,
was more mystery.
mm-hmm.
So the feedback was always, we love the book, but we don't know how to shelve it because,
Mm.
you know, back then, again, this is before, you know, this whole digital revolution. Um, they just didn't know, where does this book go? Does it go in the mystery section? Does it go in, you know, with women's fiction? What do we do with this?
Yeah.
And I just loved the book so much that I wasn't willing to just let it sit. And I wound up writing 6 books in that series, and I indie published them all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Awesome. Yeah,
yeah,
I think sometimes that you just have to take a chance on that indie publishing
you
too.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I had a similar my urban fantasy just could not sell it for anything. So I'm like, well, I'm just going to indie publish it.
Yes.
So,
And that's the beauty of, like, I tell people, like, it's a great time to be a writer
it
because
is.
you don't have to, they used to say, just put it under the bed, right? You know, like back in the day when we had to print out our manuscripts and mail them to publishers, they'd say, just slide it under the bed until it comes back around. Well, you know, now you don't have to slide it under the bed. You can just do it yourself.
Yeah, it's really it's a new day with that indie publishing. And it's just it makes I think it gives a lot of opportunity just to writers who really are good that just can't get into the traditional world for one reason or another. So it's exciting too. It's exciting to see everything that's happening. Um, but I don't want to run out of time before we talk about your coaching. So yeah, so you are also a life coach and you're
Yeah.
also my life coach. So, um, and so, you know, I just, I really appreciate that part of what you do because it's really kind of helped me work through my own little roadblocks. Um, so let's talk about your becoming a life coach. And of course, I know this story, but my listeners probably don't. So let's tell me how you became a life coach.
Okay. So, you know, over the years, I have always worked just very informally with authors, kind of like in more of like a mentoring role, right? I always
Hmm.
love to help authors because I got a lot of help along the way too. But probably now 3 years ago, kind of right after COVID, um, I had gained some weight during COVID, like many of us, right? And for
Hmm.
years, I had been a Weight Watchers member on and off. And I went back on Weight Watchers to lose some weight, and I did very well on it, and I hit my goal weight. So I, you know, super happy. And then I heard that Weight Watchers was hiring coaches, you know, because I go to my weekly workshops and they have a coach that leads the workshop. And I thought, oh, that would be super fun to do. And I was did that for about a year, and a friend of mine that I worked with told me that she was getting her life coaching certification. And I was like, "Oh, what is this now?" And I looked into it and I thought, because I just love the coaching part. I love helping people get unstuck, right?
Hmm.
And I thought, oh gosh, this would be fun because I could work with authors because, you know, this is a tough business. It's a business
Mm.
of failure, and you really have to get comfortable with failure. And
Right.
I just got really excited by that idea. So, yes, I went back to school and I got my coaching certification.
Well, and I'm so glad you did.
Well, thank you.
Um, so, thinking about that and getting, you know, helping writers, what do you see are some common struggles between writers or among writers, and how do you sort of help them overcome that?
Yeah, a lot of what I see is just getting the pages done, finding the time for writing with particularly with indie published because you know when you're indie published it's not just writing the book. Like writing the book is almost the easy part, right? It's
Hmm.
you know, it's getting it edited and getting it formatted and the marketing. It's not like you can turn the book over to your publisher and they do all that for you, right?
Right.
So, um, a lot of indie authors get really hung up on the amount of admin work that goes into publishing a book. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I hear that a lot with indie pubbed authors.
Yeah. Uh, I know that too. I feel that
Yeah.
struggle myself because I'm a DIYer, so I'm like I want to do all the things, and it's really
Yes,
hard to squeeze it in.
it is.
Um, Especially after when you finish the book, it's just such a wonderful feeling, and then you're like, oh, but I have to format it, I have to market
No,
it, I
you
have
have to do all
to,
the other stuff, right?
yeah.
While you're writing a new book,
Right,
right? Yeah,
right. Meanwhile, I'm trying to write a new book.
yeah.
Do you have any sort of specific frameworks or methods that you use in your coaching with authors or anyone?
Yeah, I think it's always for me about breaking it down into the smallest possible bits, right? Because
Hmm.
when we think about writing, whatever, a 90,000 word book, and I suffer from it myself. When I sit down to start a new book, I think, how am I going to do this? How do I do
Yeah.
this? Right?
Uh,
So it's really just about goals, right? Breaking down that big goal. You and I have talked about the
yeah.
outcome
Yeah.
goals and the process goal, right? The
Right.
outcome goal is the big goal, the writing the book. The process goals are the things you do each day to get you there, right? So
Right.
whether it's figuring out whether it's 10 minutes a day, whether it's 1,000 words a week, 5,000 words a week, whatever, how do you break it down into the smallest doable chunks?
Yeah, and I love that. That really worked for me too.
Yeah,
Just kind of thinking about it in a smaller picture. But this
yes.
can also apply to other things besides being an author too. You can apply this sort of
Oh, everything.
the big, yeah, to everything. What is your priorities? Like we talked about on Saturday, and I'm going to get to that in a second, about, your three priorities, your top three priorities and your top three stressors. And I that was when you sort of see those side by side, it just really kind of helps you put it into perspective as to what you're
Right.
doing and how you're going to get there.
Yeah.
So I really love that. And I do want to talk about you are doing a new venture now with
Yes.
Misty called Mindset Reset. So
Yep.
tell us a little bit about that and what
Yes.
how people can get involved in that,
Yeah. Well, Misty is a certified Oracle card reader,
right?
and she actually was the one that introduced me to Oracle cards. I don't know, it's got to be 10, 12 years ago now. I was at her house and she said to me, well, let's pull a card, let's do a reading. And I was like, I had known about tarot cards,
Hmm.
know what Oracle cards were. And Oracle cards are similar to tarot, but for me, they're a little more like flexible, I'm going to say, in terms of the messaging, right? Where it feels very specific to me with the different cards. And there are all kinds of Oracle card decks out there. But Misty really is so good at it, and she has such a talent for doing these readings. And
She's
I
amazing.
she is amazing. It's like, she hits it right all the time. I'm like, how does she do that? But we were just talking one day, I think, I don't even remember, and I said something to her about, we should really like try and marry the whole coaching with the Oracle card reading, because, and I mean, she and I work very well together
Hmm.
anyway, so I just thought it would be a fun thing. And before you knew it, Misty was building a Substack and we were off and running. So yeah, we're rolling out workshops. We just did the workshop on
Hmm.
Saturday, which was on time management that,
Right.
as you know, because you were there,
Right.
um, where Misty did a reading about time management for March. And then I did some individual coaching with the folks that were there just to
Hmm.
help them, work through some time management issues. So it's a ton of fun.
It is a ton of fun, and it's always enlightening to me when I sit in on those and I see her pull the cards, and even when other people are talking and you're doing the life coaching, she'll be pulling the cards, and it's very incredible to me how those two really do just marry together in a way. It's really fascinating to me. So you guys, you're going to do different workshops. Is this like monthly or how does
Yeah,
that
we have
work?
one coming up in April, on
Mhm.
April 10th at 6 o'clock Eastern. And again, you can visit our Mindset Reset Substack for that. And yeah, want to sign up. All the information will be out there. I don't think it's out there yet, but it'll be out there this week. And then, we'll have it on our all of our socials and all that too. So,
Yeah, and I'll make sure I have that link in the description of the podcast too for today, so people can go sign up and
yes.
sort of participate in that. It's really cool. I urge if you're interested in that, I really think that you should check it out. It's
Thank you.
really
Yeah,
cool.
it's just
Yeah,
a great way to get introduced to coaching
yeah,
too, in, a way that is kind of quick and, uh, just fun. We just try to make it fun. Yeah.
yeah. It is. It's a ton of fun. So, thinking back about the sort of mindset and productivity,
Yes.
um, how do you help writers, or even how do you yourself find that balance within creativity and the business side of being an author?
Yeah, it's hard because
Mm,
you have to, it's, for me personally, it's all about energy, right? And it's
mhm,
knowing. And I mean, for years, I would hear authors talk about protect the process, right?
mhm,
Protect your process. And for me, what that breaks down to is knowing when your energy is the highest for writing, when your creative juices are really flowing. Some
mhm,
people are better at night. Some people, find it easier to write in the morning. For me, I'm a morning person, so I need to get my pages done before I look at email, before I do anything.
mhm,
It takes a lot of energy, right? And it's a different kind of creative energy. It's two different sides of our brain between the creative side and the businessy side, right?
right.
So I like to do my pages in the morning because that's when my creative juices are flowing. Some folks find that they need to get all that admin out of their head so they can focus completely on the creative stuff. So,
Hmm.
really about, like, I always encourage my clients to really dig into themselves and what works best for them. When they've seen a lot of success with their writing, how did they make that happen? Right? What was the process?
Hmm. Yeah, that's really good advice, I think. And figuring out what your process is sometimes the hardest part of being a writer, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um, do you what is your best advice for writers struggling with imposter syndrome?
Oh, imposter syndrome. It's such a lovely little thing.
Mm.
Usually it comes down to, if you think about it, it's a confidence issue, right?
Mm,
It's feeling like you're not as good as people think you are,
mm,
or just, how do I do this again, right? If you've had some early success, like, not having the confidence to know you can do it again, right? So for me, working with clients, it's really about validating that this is really, it's not an uncommon thing. I mean, you can Google it, the number of celebrities that have talked about imposter syndrome, right? People like Viola Davis and Meryl Streep, who you would think there's no way, they're so uber talented. So it's not an uncommon thing. And then it's really about, again, breaking it down into smaller chunks, right? So if you've written a book that went to number one on the New York Times list, and now you're faced with, okay, now I have to do it again. If you can break it down into smaller chunks, right? Because you can't write a New York Times best-selling book if you don't write page one,
right.
right? So just I try to encourage clients to stay present, stay in the moment that they are,
Hmm.
and make a plan for that moment and not worry about when you hit 90,000 words, because you can't worry about 90,000 words, until you get there,
Right.
right? focus on the present, and reframe the thinking too. Like, okay, if you've written a chapter and the chapter is no good or you think it's no good, you can edit it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The missteps are growth opportunities.
Mm.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
So it's all about just, again, breaking it down, staying present, and just allowing yourself to make mistakes because they're growth opportunities.
right.
Yeah.
So we have about a little more than 5 minutes left. So tell us really quick where we can find you online and your books.
Yes. Well, my website, adriennegiordano.com. Books are everywhere on all the retailers. I'm mostly on Facebook. I do some Instagram too, but Adrienne Giordano author page is my Facebook page. And yeah, that's me.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, Adrienne, for joining us today
Yeah.
and sharing your information, your insights, and your incredible journey. I love it, and I enjoy talking to you anyway. So
Yes, well, ditto.
it's a treat for me. So we're gonna wrap it up. But I just wanted to say thanks everyone for watching and listening. And if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and share your favorite part of the conversation. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. I've got more amazing authors coming up and in the next week or two, so stay tuned. But until next time, keep dreaming, keep writing, and I'll see you miles beyond the page. Bye.
Bye.